Hello everyone and welcome back to the Centre for Legal Innovation's Legal Techy Tuesday series. We are absolutely delighted to be doing a virtual demo of Kim Technologies today. You'll see on your screen in front of you Karl Chapman, who is a director with Kim Technologies, and you'll also see there Chris Neville. Chris is the implementation consultant at Kim Technologies as well. Super excited to see this demo of Kim Technologies. It's just really quite amazing. As folks will know, it's a no-code, configurable workflow with case and document management obviously front and center on this platform as well. So it's going to be a great demo to be able to see exactly how all of this works. Now, with all of that being said, and Karl, I know it's incredibly early in the morning for you in the UK, and Chris, you're doing extremely well from the US as well. A truly international presentation. Over to you, Karl.
Well, thank you, Terry, very much for inviting us to do this presentation. We're always delighted to share what Kim is and what it's doing. And probably I should say, in terms of any preconceptions, even though it's dark here, that's not because it's a traditional English summer. It is, as you say, because we're still reasonably early in the morning. Before we get kicked off, Chris, would you like to introduce yourself so everyone on the call knows your background?
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Neville. I'm an implementation consultant with Kim Technologies. Based out of our New Jersey office in the United States. I've been with the company now for 3 years, configuring a variety of different business solutions and configurations for our customers.
Thanks, Chris. I can't believe, by the way, that that's 3 years. That's gone remarkably quickly. Right, Chris, let's go to our first slide, Chris. And unusually, we have a disclaimer which includes, I couldn't resist the temptation, I'm going to desperately try and get Pink Floyd into this presentation as well. But first of all, a disclaimer. All we can do is share with you the journey we've been through, the lessons we've learned, because as you can imagine, we've made lots of mistakes on the way here, but hopefully got a few things right. And I think the key thing I'd say to everybody is that, in every market, whether you're a law firm, whether you're a corporate legal department, whether you're a consultancy, whether you're a technology business, there is no silver bullet. There's no single model. There are many different ways of achieving success. So all we can do is share with you some of the lessons that we've learned, and hopefully that will be of value to you today. Chris, the next slide, please. So in that context, it's probably worthwhile just sharing with you some of the surprises that we had when we entered the legal market in 2011, 2012. I think the first surprise, given the background we came from, and I read law, by the way, never practiced, but wasn't involved in the legal market until recently, was the absence of platforms. I mean, if you think about other functions in organizations, whether it's sales with Salesforce, whether it's HR with Workday, whether it's finance with SAP, they've all got platforms. And the thing that shocked us when we first came into the legal market was the absence of platforms and all the consequences that flowed from that. So lots of point solutions, but no platforms. And I think that dramatically has influenced the way in which the legal function can work within a large organization. And also it's actually led to some other consequences. So for example, the other surprise we had was the absence of data. Of course, there's some data, and there's a lot of data there, but not coordinated and used effectively. But we were really shocked by not having at our fingertips the data that allowed us to evolve and drive businesses as we had done in other sectors and other activities. So surprised by no platform, surprised by the lack of data and the utilization of data. And Chris, if you go to the next slide, what that also led to was an interesting conversation with General Counsel and Associate General Counsel and the few Chief Legal Operations Officers that existed at the time. When we were speaking in 2011, 2012 with that audience, what was intriguing was their response to what they were doing. They were growing the size of their in-house function. And when we asked them the question why they were doing that, to a person, the response was, it's cheaper for us to employ lawyers than it is to use law firms. And the shock to us, therefore, was you had a supply chain creating a situation where it's cheaper for the customer to do it itself, which was a real surprise. But it was even more of a surprise when you realize that there's no data and no platforms. So actually, how could you sustain it? If you were growing the size of the in-house function, how could you sustain that cost benefit, that advantage? Because at one level, it was pure labor arbitrage. And to really drive it, you need to have access to that data to understand what performance is, what productivity is, how you focus the high-value legal team on the matters that make a difference, that drive revenue generation, revenue protection, risk management, all those things. So we had a number of surprises when we first came into the legal market. Chris, if you can go to the next slide, please. And flowing from that, what we concluded was that all roads led to one place, and this isn't rocket science. Chris, if you go to the next slide, they all lead to the data. And I think what's really important on the data, it was as much qualitative data as well as quantitative data. And the key was stories that were told by the data, actionable stories that allowed people to make a difference, all the way through from the simple questions: how much work do I have? Where does it come from? Who did we allocate it to? Where is it in the process? But then all the way through to preempting risk. What clauses are being negotiated when we're actually looking at contracts on the procurement or a customer side? How can we reduce our time to contract by changing our playbooks? How can we make sure that we're escalating things quicker on the fly and managing risk on the fly? So a lot of our conclusions were, actually, do you know what? All roads lead to the data, and whatever we're going to do, we've got to make sure that we address that issue. So Chris, if you go to the next slide really quickly. What we then saw were a number of common drivers. And, I'm sure this pattern is recognized by all of you. Interestingly, whether you're in a law firm, whether you're actually in a corporate legal function, we were seeing a combination of trends from the exponential growth in demand, pressure on costs. Legal's not an island, it's part of an end-to-end organization. And, it may have avoided some of the pressures that the other functions have had over the last 25, 30 years. But they were being subjected to them in the normal way, particularly, I think, very beneficially with the rise of legal operations. And actually, how do you make sure you recruit and retain the right talent in a competitive market? But how do you make sure you've got the right talent doing the right thing? So, the right work's being done by the right people in the right place. So we saw those combination of challenges. And Chris, if you go to the next slide, that led us to conclude, and I couldn't resist putting this in, the status quo. I'm showing my age now, but the status quo was untenable. What we were seeing was the corporate legal functions were going to be a major driver of change because the pressures coming onto them from their organizational business, from their tech function, from the competitive environment, that was going to drive change throughout the supply chain and also the way in which technology was deployed and the way technology was used. So we saw a whole series of conversations, and we all know change is slow. It can be slower in the legal market compared to others, but it's happening. We saw a big change in the need to evolve the operating model. Chris, if you can quickly go to the next slide. And this was compounded and is compounded by, this is a lovely slide from a chap called Derek Southall at Hyperscale. If you see what's happening across an organization, so if you take most organizations, the trend to digitization, critically the consolidation of the tech stack, which is leading to an orchestration layer and a move from point solutions to platforms. And you're seeing a lot of organizations trying to create platforms and all the other trends that you would recognize on that slide. So you've got a lot of trends in place which are in a combined way having an impact on the solutions and services we should all be providing, the way we use technology, data, and all of the other activities from law firms to internal legal functions. Chris, let's move on to the next slide, please. And that focused us, and we got this wrong to start with when we were looking at what businesses came in, what should we not do. I think you define yourself as much by what you don't do as well as what you do. We actually decided that Kim's very simple. Kim is a global SaaS products business. We're good at creating products, we're good at evolving them, and we're good at helping people work better, work quicker. Be more effective, preempt risk. That's what we're good at. So actually we go to market through partners. We have implementation partners because that's the most effective use of our resource and time. We focus primarily on corporate legal departments in our legal function activity. So we defined ourselves in terms of actually that's where our focus is going to be. And Chris, if you go to the next slide, then we can move on to the demonstration pretty quickly. If we were going to say one thing to you today about where we have been trying to take Kim, the first version of Kim was launched in, first publicly available version of Kim was launched in May 2016 after 3 years of R&D and usage within Riverview Law. We release new functionality every quarter, so we're on version 10.2 now, but where we're trying to get Kim to is this. And this quote was lovely. I'm going to get the actual client who said it on here when I've persuaded them to actually do so. But they came out of a meeting and said, I now get this. Kim is to legal function what Salesforce is to sales, what SAP is to finance, and what Workday is to HR. We couldn't have asked for actually a better summary of that. When I shared it back with the team, they were delighted because that's where we've been trying to get to. So Chris, let's talk about Kim, and then we'll get into you being the star of the show alongside Kim. When we were looking at legal functions, what was became clearer to us is in building a technology solution, whatever the size of a function, however big or small they are, whatever sector they're in, wherever they are in the world, whatever their target operating model is, we think there are probably 3 no regrets decisions. Chris, next slide, which actually allow a function to evolve and go forward. And those 3 no regrets decisions we think are intake management, self-service, and outside legal management. And by the way, they're just foundations to the entire platform. So when we were thinking about the platform that we were creating, if you go right back to basics, if you want to make sure in a corporate legal function, whatever the size, that you have the right people doing the right work in the right place at the right time, you need intake management, because you've got to answer the question, well, what work do we have? Where's it come from? Who did we allocate it to? Where is it in the process? Why did we close it? And you need all of that in one platform. You also need self-service, because if you want to free your team to go up the value curve, then really important that you can actually self-serve the business and indeed customers with appropriate documents or questions, because you want control of it, because you need to control risk and profile, but actually you need to self-serve. And then you also need to manage outside counsel to make sure that the right work's going to the right people, to make sure you're understanding why you're actually sending it in externally, because it may be you should be packaging it into a managed service contract. Maybe some of that work should come back in-house over time, whatever the appropriate things. But we think those 3 no regrets decisions are foundational because they allow people to evolve their activity. So in that context, Chris, if you go to the next slide, in that context, when we were looking at Kim, although we started at the enterprise level, so Kim until this year really had an enterprise solution, and now what we've done is brought that enterprise solution to smaller and mid-cap activities, and we'll show you that in a second. But in terms of scale, to give you an example, our largest single customer has 300,000 users in 140 countries around the world. So we have a proven global enterprise platform. And then what we've done is create a business and foundation level, which effectively productizes and modularizes Kim so that you can build your operations platform module by module. And particularly, even at an enterprise level, we recommend that you may have a burning platform like contract lifecycle management, whatever it happens to be. Actually, a great point to start is with those 3 no regrets decisions. Chris, if we go on to the next slide. So we're going to show you Kim. I have to tell you that I'm terribly proud of what a small team has done over the last 6 years. It's quite remarkable. Hopefully you'll conclude that when you see the functionality. The thing to look at is that all that functionality on the left-hand side, document management, dashboards, audit search, APIs, templates, playbooks, assembly, instruction management, self-service, all of that functionality is in Kim in one code base. And that's really important because that creates that integrated data layer and data model that allows insight and value, and also very significant integration. So when you think about Kim, Kim is both a platform and a point solution. It's a platform because all that functionality is in one tool. But it's also a point solution because you can deploy it as you see fit, as small or as large as you want. So, it could be a point solution solving contract lifecycle management or intake management, but you have the ability to take it to be an enterprise platform. As Terry referenced, this is no code, genuinely no code. If I can configure it, certainly anyone on this call could configure it because I'm not an IT person, but Chris will show you some of that in a second. And critically for us, it's been built from day one to integrate. And if I look at the pressure coming from the tech departments to reduce their tech stack, integrations with 365, with Teams, with SAP, with DocuSign, all those things become very critical to create an overall platform. Chris, next slide. Another way of looking at it is this jigsaw puzzle. So you can imagine all of that capability, which we can then amend and put into modules. Chris, I'm very keen to get to your demonstration, so let's skip to the next slide. A range of totally different use cases. So as reference, you can configure Kim as small or as large as you want. So everything through from managing freehold and leasehold portfolios for asset managers. It's public information that EY use this as their global legal operations platform to deliver managed services. A major bank uses it for everything from self-service through to derivatives and procurement contracts. A big pharmaceutical globally uses it not just for their service center, but also for all their playbook, clause, template management activity. And again, it's public information that Vodafone use this as their global contract lifecycle management tool. And I have to say, working with all of those customers has helped us get the platform to where it is, because they are rightly demanding customers and they've added a lot of value in the process. And so, Chris, for the next slide. We're just about to go into the demonstration where Kim and Chris come center stage. Before I do that, I want you to think about Kim as a house, which may sound like a strange place to start, but if you think about a house, you wouldn't build it from the roof down, you'd build it from the foundations up. And that's how Kim operates. And if you think about foundations, foundations are typically unloved, undervalued, underrated, but rather important, because without foundations, a house would collapse. So if you think about the foundations in something like Kim, the foundations are the process, the integration layer. That focuses on managing a request. So it doesn't matter what the work type is. It doesn't matter if it's legal, procurement, contract management, property, HR, it could be anything. But in terms of managing that request, it's addressing the issue, what work do we have, where's it come from? If we didn't self-serve it or redirect it, who did we allocate it to? Where is it in the process? Why did we close it? And by the way, I think people underestimate the value of case close reasons, really powerful insights, all held in one repository with live and trend dashboards. So if you imagine that foundation level, that's what that's doing. Now, if you imagine rooms in a house, every room in a house serves a different purpose, a different function. And Kim operates in the same way. So if you think about rooms in a house, they've got different furniture, different layouts, different utilities coming in. If you think about rooms in a legal function, whether those rooms are contract lifecycle management, employment, property, patents, litigation, while you configure them to do different things, they've got some common themes. They've all got templates. Now, whether those templates are in contract lifecycle management, statements of work, master services agreement, NDAs, or on the customer side, products with all the schedules, whether in employment it is letters to the court or witness statements, they're all templates. So you need a platform that can manage templates, assembly, playbook, self-service. Kim does that. Actually, the templates on their own are no good unless you can stitch them into an appropriate workflow so they're presented at the appropriate time. So you need to automate workflows. The workflow in employment law may be different from the workflow in contract lifecycle management, but it's still a workflow. You want to automate it where appropriate. So you need workflow and process automation. Kim does that. You need insight through search, dashboards, reporting. They may want different dashboards. You may search for different things, but you still need that capability, and that's in Kim. And then, of course, what you need is the ability to have different utilities coming in. So if it's contract lifecycle management, you may want to integrate with Salesforce at the front end so you can automate instruction management. You may want to integrate with DocuSign or Adobe Sign at the back end. You may want to integrate with SAP or Ariba in terms of procurement and finance, whatever it is. So you've got to have an open API layer, which Kim has. And if you think about foundations and rooms, once you've got that, you've got context. And this context is really important because that is what drives AI and machine intelligence. So what Kim does at that foundation and rooms level, it allows you to actually create context, because think about what you've captured. At the foundation level, you've got work types, you've got case statuses, you've got reports and dashboards. In the room level, you've got templates and clauses and escalation points and all the things required to actually have that appropriate data infrastructure. That context allows you then to apply other tools to drive AI and intelligence, to manage risk in flight as you're negotiating contracts, to auto-allocate work, even if it's third-party paper that's coming in. So, Chris, let's go into the demonstration. Everyone will be absolutely delighted on two things. One, that I'm going to shut up, and two, that I'm going to turn my video off so that you can actually focus on the actual demonstration that Chris is going to show. So, Chris, do you want to bring up the Kim platform? And what we're going to do on that Kim platform is, first of all, Chris is going to show you Kim in the Kim user interface. We're then going to run through a quick use case, so you have that. We'll then demonstrate to you how quickly it is to configure parts of Kim. And then we'll show you Kim in 365, because one of the key things for us is making sure that Kim can be utilized from wherever someone's coming from Salesforce, from Ariba, from 365, etc. So, Chris, my video is going off, and I promise you, Chris, I'll try and be a little bit quiet because you know how excited I can get.
Thanks, Karl. And thanks, everybody. So welcome to my Kim workspace here. Every user, regardless of their permissioning in Kim, has a workspace, and this is their initial login and landing page. Currently, I'm logged in as an administrator or a super user, so I do have an extra option along my top of my workspace here to navigate to the back office. And as Karl mentioned, this is a no-code configurable platform. So everything we'll see throughout the workspace and throughout the demonstration is all configured in the back office by our super users, from the templates, the workflows, lists, reports, and so forth here. And also something to keep in mind, while this demonstration will be in the context of contract lifecycle management, it can be applicable, or Kim can be applicable to any context, work type, organization. So from my workspace here, I'm currently loaded in list view, but I'm going to quickly switch over to my card view. What I'll see from my card view are all the different cases or matters that I've either initiated or requested, or that have been assigned to me by one of my colleagues or team members here. What card view is particularly nice for is if I am a business user and I'm perhaps working with smaller caseloads, it's really easy for me to get the quick headlines, the upfront details, get the information that stops the phone calls from coming in, what's the case status, who's created the matter, who's currently working on the case, the time and date the matter was created at, any SLAs or due dates, and some case details as well as the Kim generated reference number and a case-friendly shortcut reference here. Card view also renders particularly well on mobile. If I switch back to that list view presentation, this view is a little bit better for team members who are working in higher volumes of cases. It allows me to, all those different items I saw from the card view are now presented in list column headers, where I can easily sort, filter through my different information. So if I want to see a case by when it was requested, or the different assigners, the activity it's on in the workflow, I have that ability. I can quickly scroll through, load more cases, and also use my sorting, filtering options along the top here. If I do go ahead and click into any one of these particular cases, whether it's in list view or card view, I have everything related to this case stored in one place. It's tracked, it's stored, it's secure, it's all in one place here. What I'll see on the left-hand side are, as someone who can work this case, the actions I can take at this particular point in the case or in the workflow. And the wording, the instructions you see on here, the actual actions that I have are, again, all configured in the back office by our administrators or our super users here. I have some more details up front about this particular matter. I have all my documents for this particular case on the right-hand side. I can see the complete version history and version control of these documents, version 1, 2. I have a separate document below here that it's on its third version. I know who these are submitted by, time-stamped at when it was submitted, and what's particularly nice here, any two versions of a document. For example, if this is a service agreement here, I can compare them side by side, view any changes that have been made. That's highlighted in my document here, and apologize for the coloring, it's for demonstration purposes, but I can select this language and quickly email this out for approval, send it to my appropriate team member, put a subject in here, please review the language, I've made these changes below, and send them out. And again, everything that I'm doing within the case, from just entering the case, taking an action here, something I just showed you, is all being tracked and recorded on a case-by-case basis through this case audit here. So I can see all the actions any individual user's taking, time-stamped, any emails or notes that are being recorded throughout the lifecycle of the case. Those are additionally recorded as well. So not only do I have my documents, any individual attachment I choose to upload that's related to the case, maybe any related cases or case families that this is linked to, and again, the audit email and notes, all available within one case here. additionally,
And Chris,
from
sorry, Chris, I was just going to say that's one of the key things here is that, you know, if you were going on holiday tomorrow, and I hope you're not, by the way, because you've got a lot to do, but if you are going on holiday tomorrow, literally, if you reassign that request to me, the whole case moves into my workspace, nothing falls between the cracks, the whole file comes across, because of course we know a case is more than just the documents, it's all the process steps I can take, it's the emails, it's the notes, it's everything. And that's what this facilitates. And by the way, that includes the SLAs, because in KIM, you can automatically put SLAs on any work type, and they trigger automatically. And obviously, you can track those in dashboards and search where appropriate. So very simple, very straightforward, and it drives the value going forward. And you've already reallocated typical. You've already reallocated to Anna. Chris, sorry about that. Over to you.
No problem, Karl, thanks. So moving forward, additionally from my workspace, I have a few other options. And again, every user, regardless of their permissions, minus this back office, are going to have these options from their workspace. So they'll have their main menu here, which we'll get into momentarily, where they can create any new work items, generate requests. It's effectively their menu for creating templates. And this can be visible based on different user groups or different permissions that you set. So different users can log in and have different options to create things from that menu there. Next, from the workspace, we'll have a view of dashboards. And just like with our request menu there, dashboards are also visible based on different user types. So if I'm on the leadership team, I might see across all the dashboards, where our basic users or team members might only see their live cases, where someone maybe on an intake team will see only the allocation queue. So based on your permission or groups, you'll see different dashboards. The dashboards we have here are all based on your KIM data. So from what case types you have, template types, what you're doing in the workflow. When we get into a web form momentarily, all the fields and data points that you'll see from there are all reportable on in our KIM dashboards here. The dashboards are also particularly useful. You can apply different filters on them to view them in different ways. They continue to help, as Karl mentioned, tell the story of what you're doing in your KIM case. It's not only good to be able to have data and capture all this data information, but it's another thing to be able to view the live and trend dashboards and get all that visual representation of what's going on here and tell the stories here. Our dashboards are also particularly nice, where you can interact with them, click on any one of these data streams, see the individual matters that make up the dashboard or the report, click into it. So if you see a bottleneck in perhaps a workflow and you need to click into it and view the case, get the details, the history, it's very easy to action and do that and answer those upfront questions. And these dashboards are also all, as you'll see here in the top right, exportable to Excel. The last thing I'll mention really about dashboards is, as you're seeing, we have over, I believe, 60 different presentations, from column, bar charts, pie charts, heat maps, scatter and plots, to represent the data in the way you best see fit. And as you're seeing, also anywhere from 1 to 6 charts per page there, so different ways to present your KIM data here. Next, what also each user has access to is the ability to get to search and reports and utilize your KIM data from what we would call our reporting subsystem. So from my reporting subsystem here, I have access to all of my case results. I get some basic KIM information, the case shortcut reference, where I can click and action the case, is it live or closed, the status, the activity it's in the workflow, who created it, and when. What's really nice about this reporting subsystem, it allows me to work with my KIM cases and my KIM case data and effectively create my own exportable Excels from here. So if you think of this as the rows and columns of an Excel, you can build searches and queries and add KIM content controls or KIM field data and create your own Excel here. So I have the ability to use an advanced filter here. So if I want to filter down from any of my 113 results here, I can use either different template types, different workflows, groups and KIMs, date ranges, like KIM content control data or web form data. Let me action one of my existing ones here. So if I want to look at financial urgency in EMEA, maybe over the last month, I can say, okay, urgency equals high, the region is EMEA, and it has to do with financial implications there. So I get 13 results. Now, if I want to add additional columns using some of the data that I've been capturing in my forms and throughout my case life cycles, I can create an output map. All my KIM data is available to me. So these would be the fields that the end users are inputting data. We'll see that in just a moment when we actually go and create a case. Let me look at one of the existing ones. So say contracts, urgency, and geography. I can take any of these points, give them any aliases if I want to include any extra information such as our case notes history, case history, to-dos, timing information, cycle report information. I can apply that as well, make these either for myself or available for the entire account. Once I've saved an output map from there, I can action it from my saved output maps. And as I click these, you'll see it add those additional columns that I've just selected on the previous screen. So if I want to capture the currency that the cases were creating in, the urgency, priority, location, and again, remember this is financial urgency in EMEA, I can validate that data. Yep, I can see the urgency for their cases entered by the user. The requester selected this was high. See, it looks like the priority or the reason selected was financial implications. Yep, and the location seems to be correct, European Union, United Kingdom. I'm able to verify that there as well. So as I select my different output maps, I'll get different content controls or data points along the top of the case there. So if I want to look at perhaps my agreement language here, let me refresh this.
And so, Chris, where this is really valuable is it allows you to manage things like searching for give me every customer who's got a contract renewal date of X because I want to run a renewals campaign. Give me every contract in which there are clauses such as this because the European Union has changed the rules on data privacy and I need to remediate these contracts. I want to schedule a daily or weekly or monthly report showing me all live cases which have got a value over $1 million or where I've got a litigation issue in relation to this. So the power of this is all in one platform. And so I'm really glad you focused on this bit because if you think about the house analogy, this is actually what drives the whole platform. When people are doing their normal day-to-day work, this data is being created in the background and you can interrogate it in very effective ways. I'm very conscious of time, Chris. So do you want to move on to the next bit you were going to show?
No problem, thanks, Karl. And just the last piece, as you kind of mentioned in here, this data is all available either for export or, as you'll see here, managed schedule. So if you need to send it out on a weekly, monthly, yearly, daily, one-time basis to certain users, you can schedule that up and set it out there. So now returning to my workspace, let's go ahead and actually do a demonstration of creating a KIM case. Entering the data and taking it through allocation. So from my workspace, I'll go to generate a request. I see as a user here, I have a few different options. So let's say I need to create a new contract. Clicking on any of those web form menu options is going to take me into my dynamic web form where I can then enter the data. And keep in mind, everything that you're seeing here, the names of the fields, the field types, how many fields are all configured in our back office by our administrators here. So I'm going to go ahead
Chris,
and
if you,
information.
yeah,
Go ahead, Karl.
you fill it in, Chris, and I'll just quickly talk over the top because I know you can multitask, but let's just make it quicker for everyone. So effectively, the request form is configured for different work types because the information you require for an employment matter is different from a contract matter or whatever it happens to be. The objective of the request form is to capture the minimum information required to do one of three things: self-serve, redirect, or allocate. And if you're allocating it, clearly you want the appropriate information to allocate to the right team, the right individual. If you're going to do it automatically, or you need the appropriate information to allow a manager to allocate as appropriate. So these forms are all configurable, as you'll see in a second, and they're configured by work type. And the configuration is really quick because it's point and click, as Chris will show in the background in a second. So everything in relation to the request form is designed to drive speed, efficiency, proper allocation, and to have the minimum information, but they're all data points. So go back to what Chris showed you in dashboards and in search. All of this is sitting here in one integrated data layer. And to show you the way these things tell actionable stories, Chris is just about to, we typically ask a user, what is the urgency of the request? So if you look at this field, how urgent it is, we always know they tend to say hi. The great thing is what it forces them to do is actually give the reason why. So the ability to have a conversation with the head of sales who's telling legal that you're the blocker on contracts and be able to say, well, 73% of the requests from your team are high urgent, and in 49% of the cases it's because you've got an imminent meeting. Well, that starts telling a story that allows you to go upstream and improve processes. You can also, as Chris is showing here, you can add and attach documents, make them compulsory so you can drag and drop as required, and that allows you to actually make sure you've got a complete instruction. So literally, Chris could have come out of a meeting and be in his car in a car park when those days return for us, or he could be on a train or a plane, and you can actually fill these forms in very, very quickly. And Chris, if you submit the form, what that does is create the request.
So I've just completed the web form, and as Karl mentioned, that gives me my complete instruction. It handles it for correct allocation, and all those fields that we saw within there, again, are available for our dashboards and our reporting we saw. So now I have a new case. I can see I was the requester, the time and the date, which is coming from my browser culture. Some of the information I just entered in, the SLA has been kicked off, and now what can I do if I click to view into case management here? I can review any of the documents I just generated. I also get a quick access from the case card here and some instructions on what I can do at this point in the workflow, which is in review with intake team. So right now I'd be a member of the intake team. If I review the document and it's lacking any instruction, I can send it back to the requester. And again, the actions that I can take here, all configurable, the language, everything here. So maybe it's incomplete instructions, but let's say we did a good job filling out the request. We need to now allocate this out for a contract offer and fulfill the request. So I'll allocate it to myself, give it any note optionally there, and we'll see the status now has updated to in progress with contract author, and I've been assigned the case. I can now get a new set of, go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the key things there as well is a business user who submitted the request has also received an email knowing that it was allocated to you and gets all case status updates. So it does stop that failure demand coming in. And the request could have been auto-allocated depending on the rules you set up in the back office. So either it's manually allocated or auto-allocated.
Right, absolutely. The fields that you fill out in the web form can drive the allocation process. And yes, every user who's involved in the process along the way can get either on-screen alerts, as you're seeing here, or email alerts letting them know the case has been actioned or updated, whatever it may be at that point in time. So now I've been assigned the case as a contract author. I have a new set of actions here on the left-hand side, and actioning my template library, I'm going to fulfill this request for a master service agreement. Using my available templates here, I'll select my master service agreement. It'll take me to the web form for this, where I can see some of the data that was entered by the original user. So I have that information available to me. It could be either read-only, or I could have the ability to update it. As I move to the next screen, now I'm getting into the actual bulk of the agreement, where I can view the language, make any changes. If you want to give your contract matter that ability, you can always do it at a later point in time. And as I progress forward, I can see by not making any changes, this will generate my 100% approved master service agreement with all the language and headings that my organization has deemed appropriate here. So as I preview the document, go ahead, Karl.
No, I was just going to say, I think the thing to say to everyone here is that effectively this is drawing on the templates in the back office, and the difference in colors just for demonstration purposes. So a business user submitted a request. It's been allocated to Chris as the legal team member. The first version of the contract is generated automatically unless Chris wants to amend it with all of his fallback positions, and we'll show you that in detail when we go into seeing it in Word. Chris, I think this is a good time to do the following before you go into Word. I want you to imagine that we've come out of a meeting, and that meeting has been with an internal stakeholder, the head of procurement, the head of finance, the head of sales, and they've said to us, as a result of the data, we're going to change the dashboard because I'd like to have this dashboard, please, team, that shows me X. and everyone on the call should remember that live cases by team member, that top dashboard. So imagine I've come out of a meeting, we've come out of a meeting, it's the head of procurement, the head of finance, the head of sales. We need a new dashboard. We need to change a workflow because the data says we need to put a new step in for either control purposes or take out a step, or put an escalation move, whatever it happens to be. And we also want to amend a template by changing our negotiating position, because our experience is we always concede to this point. So let's make it part of our template so we can reduce the time to contract. So Chris, I now want you to put the super user hat on. And why don't you show, first of all, the dashboard? We wanted to add a new dashboard. So a new dashboard creation is the same as editing an existing dashboard. So show how quickly it is to configure a dashboard.
Thanks, Karl. So, yep, as a super user, remember we have back office access. I'm going to access reports, which will configure our dashboards or create our dashboards. As Karl mentioned just a moment ago, creating a new dashboard and editing an existing is almost the exact same process. So let's go ahead and edit that leadership dashboard here, that management report. You can see it right here. I'll click edit on it. I have my existing dashboards where I can click which one I need to edit and update based on the specifications that came out of that meeting. I can see all my different parameters. I can change those if need be, move to my different template types. As we mentioned, you can present the layout in a variety of different ways. So I can either update my parameters there, change the presentation on how we want to view this particular dashboard, whatever works best for us for this type of data. And then we can update the information, or if we're creating a new one, give it the title that it's based on here. So
it's one of the rules, Chris, and you're doing very well so far. You're doing very well so far, not making any spelling mistakes, because I never get through a demonstration without making spelling mistakes when I'm demonstrating something.
Oh, it's difficult. So I'll go ahead and actually save the dashboard that I've made here, and probably quicker than I can send that email out to my team, letting them know that, hey, that new dashboard we all just discussed is now available. They'll be able to log into Kim, click it, and see the live changes that have been made. Their new dashboard appears in their workspace, or the dashboard that they previously had has been updated. So just like that, we have new dashboards. So the second part, yep.
Yeah, Chris, go to templates, because I think this is a really powerful one for people to understand, because effectively, great thing about templates, and can you open it up, Chris, on back office on templates? If you go to the back office on templates, here's the good news. All of an organization's templates are in one place. So the governance, the audit, the consistency are all in one place. And the great thing, Chris, as you know, is by uploading a template into Kim, it actually seeds the Kim back office. And Chris, if you want to open up one, what that does is actually give you a series of options, including your playbook for that template. So Chris, do you want to actually show the template and the playbook, and how you end up with self-service being driven, negotiation being driven, and the analysis of third-party paper?
Sure, absolutely, Karl. So I've just edited on that master service agreement we generated the first version for. You'll see every template, while they all have the same properties, you can configure them to be very unique with their own template options. As I scroll through here, as Karl mentioned, when you initially upload a template in from Kim, a template is just really a Microsoft Word document, and we utilize a portion of it called content controls. So this is available to everyone who has access to Microsoft Word. It's this piece called Developer Content Controls, and it's the fields you're seeing here. Anywhere I'm going to have variable information within my agreement or my document, whatever it may be. That's how we're capturing the information using those content controls. When you upload to Kim, it takes all those content controls and seeds them throughout the platform, as Karl just mentioned, so that it makes it available to me in my dashboards that we were just creating, my search and report that we viewed earlier, the web form that we saw the end user filling out, as well as our playbooks right here. We have those different headings for language options within the agreement. I can click on one of those. I have the ability to weight them appropriately, and I can add in my organization's language found in the agreements. And typically what we find, those last maybe 10 agreements that you got signed by the customer, the language that you use to get the agreement signed, that's typically going to be the language you're going to weight the highest and have as your approved language. There might be some other circumstances where, 2 out of 10 customers happen to agree with this for circumstances XYZ in this region or for this dollar amount. This will be our fallback language. We'll give the ability for users to maybe access this in the playbook, but it will change the weighting of the document a little bit, and we'll also provide some guidance language on maybe why they would use this information. Or we could use the fields in the web form to drive the output of certain language in the document. So if a user selects the contracts in EMEA versus the United States, or selects that the contract's worth over $1 million, we want to use this clause instead of this clause and drive the output of the document there. So
Chris, I'm very conscious of time.
Yes.
And so effectively, by uploading templates into Kim, it drives self-service, negotiation, and the analysis of third-party paper. The function ends up with control, and it allows you to actually drive efficiency and effectiveness, but also consistency. Chris, do you want to quickly, you've just shown there very quickly about adding and deleting an appropriate clause.
Yep.
That was the second one. Why don't you quickly do the third one? And I think just show the, on the workflow, just show the graph that's generated, because then I think you need to move into 365.
Yeah, absolutely. So back office workflows, users can, again, just like they configure their templates, configure their workflows. What I'll show you right now is a visual representation of a workflow built in Kim. The large blue boxes are what we would call activities, and they are either the statuses for the steps you would take to complete a particular workflow. So in review with intake team, with the requester, with the contract author, in progress with client, legal. These were some of the steps we saw when we were just navigating through that demo workflow, and the lines connecting them and the actions on them are those route actions we saw on the left-hand side, the actions I can take at a particular activity or status there. So the ability to, from back office workflows, allows the super user to either create new activities here, the large blue boxes, or add, remove different commands that you're seeing here that give users the ability to complete what they need for the particular process. Things like sending email, reassigning to other users, adding case notes, updating to a different status, creating a child template as we saw to generate that first version. So that's a little bit about our workflows here.
So Chris,
move into Word.
Yeah, definitely move into Word. So for everyone's benefit, you've got Kim. Kim is the house analogy we described. So for us, how do you make sure you get quick user adoption? And do just switch to Word now, Chris.
Okay.
How do you get user adoption? What you do is you make sure that people can use it from existing tools they have in such a way that it makes it easy for them to actually drive it. Chris, we can still only see the flow chart from the workflow. So how do you make sure you can, if you're in Salesforce or you're in 365, actually, or in Teams, there's some really fascinating stuff the team are doing in relation to Teams. How can you make sure that, imagine you are a legal team member or a contract manager or a procurement professional and you're in Outlook or Word, or the experience is going to be the one you're going to see. So here you are sitting in Word, you've got your Kim sidebar, and whatever you configure in Kim automatically is available through Word in its environment with the sidebar with all the same activities. So you configure once and it's then presented. So Chris, do you want to just quickly show a use case in terms of negotiating an in-flight document? Because that will bring people, bring it to life for people in terms of playbooks, etc.
Absolutely. So kind of picking up where we left off in the demonstration from my browser a moment ago, we submitted a request for a new contract. We generated that first version of the agreement. So now let's say I'm a legal team member and I'm picking up that in-flight agreement from my cases in my Kim sidebar here. I can access the case by opening the document. When I click open up the document, it'll open up that latest version here. I can see, okay, there's already been some red line changes. So I know this is an in-flight agreement. I have the latest version. Using all the power of Kim and Microsoft Word, I can use my track changes here. I can apply any new comments to the agreement, as well as add any of my own track changed comments here. So let me enable changes here. If I want to remove, add any new language, I have that ability. But really what makes this particularly nice, we saw our playbook a moment ago on how to configure that, but the use of a playbook as a user here. So as I navigate through my document, I have my different headers here. If I access my Kim playbook here, I have all those same headers and all the language that my organization has approved. So let's use assignment as an example. So I can search for assignment. And I can see, yep, we do have an assignment clause within this agreement here. I can see the language, let's compare it, is different than what my organization is saying we have approved. And you know what, I want to use our language here. So I'll quickly copy it from my playbook in my Kim sidebar and simply just paste it in. It's all tracked. I can make any formatting changes I need to. And once I'm satisfied with any of the changes now I've just made in my document, referencing my playbook, I can now come back to my case, quickly hit update. It'll process for just a moment. Kim will give me a successful case update, and then I can get some more information on it, the case reference, access the document again if I need to continue to draft a version. If I have some of the other options here, I can view the case from the workspace. I have case details here as well. I can also send email out from here. When you go to send an email, I can just simply put in the recipient, what the subject is, add a message, and then it gives me again the latest version of the agreement here. I can see the timestamp, the version history. How do I want to send this out, either by PDF or docx or both, so the Word document or a PDF version of it. And then again, that's all tracked within the case history on each individual case as you take action here.
And Chris, I think we'll hand back to Terry because I'm conscious we've got 8 minutes left, and you've talked even quicker than I normally talk, which I have to say is pretty impressive. But I think the key thing to say to people, Terry, is that, you know, all the power of Kim without leaving Outlook, without leaving Word. If you're in Salesforce, you click an icon and it pre-populates. We've tried to make Kim the engine that allows you to have an operations platform, which you can now use across enterprise to smaller organizations. I hope that was helpful, Terry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Karl and Chris. It was brilliant. And folks, if you've got any questions, please do take advantage now to pop those into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I've got a quick one for you, Karl, and it's super practical. When you kind of introduce this into an organisation, how long do you kind of generally find that it takes for them to become familiar with it? Because while there's a lot there, it's also very integrated. That level of integration is really impressive. But I'm wondering, you know, might be a question that folks might be pondering.
And I think a lot of it, Terry, comes down to the start point. So if you, depending on, and this is the beauty about, you know, building it module by module. So we have some organizations that actually have, I've got this global contract lifecycle management problem. That is a bigger challenge in terms of timelines and integration and all the things that go with a project like that. Yeah. But you could have the intake and allocation management tool live in 48 hours. Yeah. And you don't need any training. It's so easy to use. Yeah. For the legal team, I think the interesting debate is, you know, you do it incrementally. So if you know about templates and clause libraries and playbooks, ironically, most people say, well, we don't have all those templates. Well, in practice, they do, because the last 10 contracts they signed are effectively the playbook that they've been working to, even if that's not really what they saw it as. So our ability to take those contracts and synthesize them and upload them into the back office is really fast. Mm-hmm. And suddenly you've got self-service and you've got negotiation and you've got the appropriate consistency. So I think a lot of it depends on, you know, where do you want to start? If we're dealing with, you know, a global bank, invariably it is a major project, it's part of an end-to-end digitization, and we will incrementally release functionality in an agile basis as they do it. If you actually just want to start with intake management or self-service, very, very quick, 48 hours, adoption rates are really high because it's easy to use. Yeah.
I mean, it's very customizable as well by the looks of it. And that's, you know, it kind of, you can make it your own really quickly as well. What's your dream team to kind of work with in an organisation? You know, I mean, obviously
that's a really good question.
Legal counsel, right? But do you need a bunch of IT support, or do you folks tend to provide whatever you need?
It's a really, really good question. In terms of the things you have to do in parallel, in any organization, if you put to one side for a second the business users, the legal users, the other stakeholders, in parallel with what you're implementing there, you've got to take the IT function with you.
Yeah.
Because, there's InfoSec, there's integration. So the lessons we learned very early on is engage early with the IT team so they can tick all the boxes on security, InfoSec, data, all the things you'd anticipate.
Yeah.
Then the ideal team on the actual delivery side is you want a nice combination of people who are business users who actually are going to be submitting requests to the function, who actually have the insight of saying, look, I'm trying to negotiate this contract or deal with this employment matter or that property lease. You want the legal team involved. But by the way, recognizing that MVP stands for minimum viable product, not maximum viable product. I think one of the challenges that lawyers have is they're so bright and so intelligent, they want it to be 100% perfect. Life ain't like that. So a combination of business users, the legal team users, and interestingly, a senior stakeholder who's going to be looking at the outputs. Everything we do, you reverse back from the outputs. What information do I need to do my job if I'm a salesperson or a legal team member or a general counsel or a sales director? Let's make sure we reverse back from the outputs. And the combination of the legal team, the business team, and a stakeholder makes it really work.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I guess now with the amount of experience that you folks have kind of across the board, it's very easy to kind of help people identify those people and assemble the team.
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing is actually getting people to, the big challenge we have is Kim is so configurable, people want to start configuring it. And you have to stand back and say, hold on, what problem are you trying to solve? Right. Let's understand the problem. Now let's understand whether technology is the right solution to it. Okay, now if technology is the right solution, is Kim the right solution to that problem? Now, before you start configuring, let's understand the way, reverse engineer it back from the outputs. What are the outputs that you want? And let's make sure that the workflows, the templates capture the appropriate data to drive that process and that the user experience is seamless. So the challenge we have with people is do the hard work, the foundation building. Don't just jump in and configure it because you'll regret, you'll configure at pace and you'll repent at leisure.
Yeah, like one step forward, two steps back, I guess, almost, yeah.
Because, it's foundational. You've got to get the foundations right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thank you so much again. Absolutely amazing demo. I mean, a really impressive product. And as I say, I think the integration aspect of it in particular is both commendable and amazing. So thank you again very much, Karl. Thank you, Chris.
Well, Terry, just one thing. Thank you very much for inviting us. You can probably tell we're both enthusiastic about it. And what I'd like to say to everyone on the call, I mean, these are interesting and challenging times that we're all in, and we wish everyone, with all the activities that they're doing, every success. And as we all know, it's hard work. Yeah. But hey, do you know what? Let's all make it happen and try and have some fun in the process.
Collaboration. We love collaboration.
It's exactly what it is, Terry. Absolutely.
Well, folks, thank you very much also for attending. Really, really appreciate it. We've got a bunch more sessions coming up in Legal Techy Tuesday. We love this series. We love the opportunity to showcase the brilliant work from around the world, this being a great example in terms of this presentation today. So do make sure that you connect with us on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook to be able to see all of those again. So again, Karl and Chris, an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to staying in touch. And to you and to everyone here, we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again, folks.